Morning. Good
Good
morning.
morning, sir. How are you?
Good. What about you? How is everything?
Fine, sir. Perfect.
Great. So it's a great setup. Great
So,
analysis.
we have the guest. Somdev sir is there. Sir, good
Good
morning.
morning. Good
Good
morning,
morning,
sir.
morning,
I'm
Tarjani. How are you, Tarjani?
I'm fine, sir. How are you?
I am very fine.
Great, sir. So
Nice to see you again.
we have Dr. Anand Rai from GLB IMR Jaipur, Noida, sir.
good morning,
Oh,
sir.
welcome.
Very good morning, sir.
So we have
Very
Pishan Sipani, sir.
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Sipani, sir, you are not visible. And we have Mr. Abhishek also. He has also not joined. Just a second. I'll just check that, and we'll add the participants as well.
Sure.
Fine, sir.
Yes.
Abhishek Pancholi, sir, right?
बैनर लाइव कर रहा हूँ। अब स्पीड है नहीं, मेरे को तो रेडिट पे जाना है, उस पर मेल पे जाकर के तो कनेक्ट होना ना। अरे वेट करो ना थोड़ी देर। हाँ Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Prashant, sir.
Good morning, sir.
So I think Mr. Abhishek is also there. If we can have the spotlights.
ये शेड that we hटा दो screen.
Yes. So we are good to go.
Good morning, everyone. I, Dr. Gaurav Malpani, on behalf of FMS IRM, welcomes you all on the Budget Analysis 2021 session. To start with, okay, let me tell you people something about FMS IRM. Okay. The faculty of FMS, the Faculty of Management Studies, that is Institute of Rural Management, was established and led by SIARM, and it is a contemporary, smart and innovative institution and a leading research-led B school in India. It is affiliated to AICTE and is ranked A++ among India's top B schools and first among the best B schools of Rajasthan, as identified by various surveys and studies. Launched in 1994, it has traversed a long path to earn an inviolable name as one of the major centers of excellence in management education, training, and development research in the country. Over the last 2 decades, it has built an outstanding reputation for program excellence and high quality learning experience apart from management education. It is regularly pertaining government and corporate houses in their developmental initiatives and a consulting entity. So now I hand it over to our moderator, Dr. Prashant Sipani, to take it forward.
Thank you, Dr. Gaurav. Good morning to all of you. Our distinguished speakers for the day, Dr. Somdev, Dr. Anand Rai, and CA Abhishek Sharma, all the faculties and staff of FMS IRM Jaipur, and the students of FMS IRM Jaipur, and the guests who have joined this budget analysis organized by FMS IRM Jaipur. A very good morning to all of you, and I welcome all of you to this session, online session onto budget analysis for the year 2021. We have got a panel of distinguished and well-known speakers, and they are highly experienced in their own respective fields. The panelists consist of 3 persons. Dr. Somdev. Dr. Somdev is Professor Emeritus, University of Rajasthan. He has been associated with University of Rajasthan for over 3 decades at various administrative and teaching positions. He has also been associated with Indian Council of Social Science Research for a very long time, and he has been also onto the board of directors of Jaipur Stock Exchange Limited as a government appointed director. He has got a vast and rich experience of handling these matters. I welcome Dr. Somdev to this online budget analysis, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for
Thank you, Prashant.
giving us your time and your thoughts and your experience. Next, the panelists include next as CA Abhishek Sharma, who has been a fellow member of ICAI and who has also been a Bachelor of Law. He has held various positions at Jaipur branch of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, and presently he is Regional Council member of Central India Regional Council of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He has also been a faculty at ICAI, and he has taken various sessions onto indirect taxes, including GST, foreign trade policy, and even customs. I welcome CA Abhishek Sharma for this session. Then we also have Dr. Anand Rai, who has been an MBA with finance specialization and a PhD. He is associated as Associate Professor into the area of finance with GL Bajaj Institute of Management and Research, Greater Noida. He also possesses a very vast academic industry experience of more than 23 years. He is active in research and has published several papers in various national and international journals of repute. He has conducted various international workshops on non-financial reporting at Bangkok in 2013, then in Dubai in 2015, and also at Kuala Lumpur in 2016. His current area of research includes microfinance and sustainable development. I welcome Dr. Anand Rai to this budget talk. Welcome, sir. So these are the three panelists which we have, and we will be able to gain and benefit out of their such vast experience in different areas. Now, without going further on to general aspects, I'll straight away come to this analysis, and I would like to request Dr. Somdev, Professor Emeritus, University of Rajasthan, to start with onto this session. Sir, first of all, your views and your thoughts, plus some input from yours onto the budget presented by our Honorable Finance Minister, Shri Nirmala Sitharaman ji. Sir, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Prashant. Thank you very much. Am I audible, Prashant? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, Dr. J.C. John, the director of the IIRM FMS, Dr. Tarjani Goyal, Dr. Malpani, Prashantji, Dr. Rai, and C. Abhishek Sharma, and all my friends and colleagues and students. First of all, let me congratulate the IIRM for organizing such an important discussion on the budget, because this time the budget is considered to be an unprecedented kind of a budget. So a lot of things are coming up. Of course, the presentation of budget was a different event, but when you analyze or you can say when you read the fine prints of it, you get so many different things. But of course, the budget was really unprecedented under the present circumstances. I can say that only. As you all know, there are 6 important pillars on which this budget is presented. I'll just name them hurriedly. First was health and well-being, but I'll analyze later what has happened to health. Physical and financial capital and infrastructure. Inclusive development for aspirational India. Reinvigorating human capital. Innovation and research and development. And minimum government and maximum governance. This is what are considered to be the main pillars on which this budget is set to be presented in the Parliament on 1st February by Madam Nirmala Sitharaman. No doubt, the budget was welcomed overwhelmingly by the stock market, but that's a different story, how the stock market is going up. But the most important thing is that this budget has been presented and focusing mainly on the infrastructure, which we were lacking for quite a long time. I'll not be too long in my presentation because there are other people to explain. And the government reforms are there in terms of 2 things. One, allowing the states to borrow more. You can understand the basic idea or the basic background behind this, because over the period of last 5 years, the states are not being given their due so far as their share of GST is concerned. So now this time, the government of India through this budget has given certain extension to their powers to borrow more. Another very important thing is privatization of the public enterprises, or which you can call them the disinvestment. Though this time the disinvestment target has been kept at 1.75 lakh crores of rupees, as against the last year's that was around 2.1 lakh crores of rupees. And still, if you analyze the 2.1 lakh crores, the government could hardly get 32,000 crores. So I am really skeptic so far as the disinvestment process is concerned, but I believe this time they have acquired a different model known as the asset monetizing. Of course, the asset monetizing has its own problems. Another important thing is that so much is said about the expenditure on the health, which is the first pillar of the budget. If you look at the budget on the health, the budget estimates of 2021 was 65,000 crores, and now this is 71,000 crores. So it comes just 9.6%. It is not 137% as it is said to be, because all other things have also been included in it. Say, for example, vaccination is also included, water and sanitation is included, nutrition is included, and this is how they have made it 137%. But I'm sorry, I'm a little bit disappointed by having only this much of expansion in the budget on the health. It comes to just 9.6%. And I can tell you one more thing. If you look at the present condition of the health sector in our country, it is, if it is not miserable, it is very bad. And at present, around 1.5% of the GDP is being spent on the health, which it should have been at least 2 to 3%. Must be on the higher side, because we have just gone through the pandemic, and I was expecting a huge amount of budget so far as the health was concerned. Another important thing is, if you look at some of the findings of the High Working Group, they have said just recently that by the end of 2020, the government requires to allocate at least 114% to the small, or you can say the PHC level, that is public health center at the rural and the village level, and then 20% in the sub-district and district hospitals. I would have been happy if more and more budget could have been given to this. Of course, I leave so many things for the discussion. And there was one more finding by the same panel, 179% on the community health. If you look at the community health situation, sir, I can tell you one very disquieting feature on the health. Ayushman Bharat is nothing but a social insurance with the public, you can say the private insurance with the public funds. This has been there in the Ayushman Bharat, you can read it. One more important thing about the fiscal data, of course, the budgetary deficit and the fiscal deficit was within the control. I don't mind becoming this 9.5% as the fiscal deficit of the GDP, because that was need to be, because the government had to resort to very high borrowing. But keeping the fiscal deficit to 6.8% in the coming year, that is, say in the year 21-22, to me it appears less realistic, because I believe that the government has to go for very big borrowings so far as this is concerned. But yes, one thing I am happy about is that this Food Corporation of India, which is owing about 2.54 lakh crores of rupees, has been taken away from that and brought back to the budgetary process. So you can say a certain element of transparency has been resorted in the budget. For me, the fiscal deficit numbers are not important. What's simply lacking in this budget from my point of view, the demand stimulus is very, very less. Wherever we have tried to tackle the problems, we have done it through the supply side, not from the demand side. This is one observation which I would like to make. Another important thing is, of course, this is a huge budget. This is a huge budget. Some people say growth centered, some people say infrastructure centered, no doubt about it. But the problem is, how do you finance? I think Dr. Anand Rai will throw some light on it. How do you finance this growth expansion? I do not find anywhere the resource mobilization that is being done by the government. Most of the resources are considered to be managed only through the asset monetization process. This is going to be, or I can say, we are going to pay high price for this asset monetization. Of course, the roadmap of the asset monetization has not yet been made clear either by the government or by the finance ministry. Some say it is asset monetization pipeline, something will be transferred to the NHAI, something will be taken from the CPSE. Now you can just, I have certain stray thoughts on this. The central public sector undertakings to whom you are going to disinvest. If the land bank is going to some other place, then who is the entrepreneur going to buy these enterprises? Even the loss-making enterprises are being bought by these entrepreneurs simply because of the reason that they have a huge land bank and whatever they can generate resources from these lands. Then there is a question that how this land will be sold. I don't want to quote the exact word what Sita has said. She said monetizing of land can either by way of direct sale or concession or by similar means. This requires special abilities for this purpose, and a special purpose vehicle is going to be created for that. Now the question arises, if you are creating, is it a kind of a land bank? Number one. Or when you will disinvest a public sector enterprises, doesn't this land form the part of the valuation of the total enterprise and how it will be sold? And if it is separated, or you can say, if the land is separated from the CPSE, it will be very difficult to have a good valuation of the enterprises, and I believe it will be very difficult to sell them. Another important thing is, as per the Department of Investment and Public Asset Management, that is DPIPAM, they are still not very clear. It is very easy to say in our country that the land will be sold out. But selling a land is not an easy job so far as the Indian legal system is concerned. Talk about the acquisition of land for the road infrastructure. I hope everybody knows that how many road projects are being scuttled only because of the problems of the acquisition. They are just acquiring, they are not selling it. There also, so I don't think this asset monetization will prove to be a big success, because so far as this asset monetization is concerned, a big question is on execution and implementation of this asset monetization pipeline. This is one thing which I would like to submit. Another important thing I'll come to, I think that is more important about it. I don't want to go into the data because I can tell you the scheme-wise allocation of the budget. I am coming to the question of the federalism. Sir, in my view, this budget has considerably jolted the federal structure of the country for three reasons. Number one, whatever GST dues are available to the states, they have not been given. Number one. If you look at the health infrastructure, more and more resources should have been given to the states, because ultimately it is the state that is taking care of the health issues. Of course, the government has allowed the borrowing limit to the states, but the borrowing limit allowing to the state doesn't mean that you are adding to the finances, but you are creating another liability to the already faltering states as it is. Another important, if you look at the total transfers to states and the union territories, it is the data given by the government of India. Last year, 2021, it was 13.14 lakh crores. this year in 21-22, it will just be 13.89 lakh crores. It means just 75 lakh, 0.75 lakh crores is more. That amounts to nothing. Because what has happened over the period of time, this GST Council, after having subsumed all the indirect taxes, I need not to go into that detail. Prashant and Abhishek can deal with them very in detail. The main thing what has happened, I can tell you one thing is going to happen. Now, the states were asking for bringing the petroleum products within the ambit of the GST, but now they will not ask it. Simply because of the reason, because the resource flow from the center to the states is drying, and they are left with only one choice, that is petroleum sector. So and you see, this time the government of India has imposed agriculture infrastructure development cess. And you see, to my understanding, I may be wrong, please correct it. Government says that we have reduced the excise, basic excise or the basic rate of the excise or the union excise they have reduced. Sir, if you are reducing the union excise, it means you are reducing the divisible pool from the center to the states. This is one thing. On the other hand, when you are imposing cess, that doesn't come under this divisible pool. It means, as you know, as per Article 272 of the Indian Constitution, the divisible pool is not from the cess. It is only from the taxes and union excise duties and union taxes. So the states are losing on both the grounds. On the one hand, they are not getting their due. Sir, it has been calculated from 2018-19 to 2020-21, 47,000 crores of rupees are still due of the states on account of the GST. I am quoting Professor Jayati Ghosh, which he has written some research article some time back. On the one hand, you are drying up the resources of the states. On the other hand, you are not providing the states required resources. So this is going to happen in the times to come. This is another important. Just a minute. Yes. Good morning.
You are on mute, sir. Professor Som.
So,
Why this budget has been, because I'm really surprised to see why this budget is being praised like anything. For three reasons. Number one, there was no fresh taxes. Number two, people were expecting the COVID cess, which has not been imposed by the government. So people are feeling happy, and no rezigging of the income tax slabs and all that. That's why the people are feeling happy. And another important, that the stock market is going high. That's why they are feeling happy. But the problem is, if you look at the fine details, say for example, the exemption of filing of returns by the senior citizens of 75 years of age. I think I leave it to Abhishek. To my mind, it is absolutely a misnomer and the misguiding to the nation. Another important thing about the interest being earned on the contributory PF, that is Employment Provident Fund, about 2.5 lakhs rupees. Sir, that was the provision in the existing law because of which the people were doing it. It was not a kind of a tax evasion. It was just a kind of a tax planning. Because there is a simple reason why the private sector employees prefer the CPF, because the private sector people do not have any retirement benefit, any social security like me or like any government servant. That's why they were diverting lot of money naturally in order to have the benefits at the time of the retirement. Then on the other hand, the senior citizens, you are on the one hand reducing continuously the rate of interest. Of course, this is for the first time yesterday, or yeah, I think it was on 5th February this month. The RBI governor say that we are not rejigging the rates like repo and reverse repo, simply because that inflation is going up. But I'm sure the inflation will go up. This is my hunch, and the government and the RBI will have to revise these rates simply because of the reason that the headline inflation or the core inflation is going up day by day. One more thing I would like to tell you. The tax GDP ratio at this present is 9. रुचि मैं बात करता हूं आपसे आधे घंटे में. मैं बात करता हूं आधे घंटे में. The tax GDP ratio at present is 9.9%, and in 22 it is going to be 9.6%. It means, on the one hand, you don't have the resource mobilization because you feel that the people are already overburdened. You feel that the people are not in a position to pay more tax, and that is why the tax GDP ratio is going to be down. Another important thing which I will tell you, the capex expenditure is considered to be 35% more. If you account for three factors: one, inflation; second, the revised estimates of 2021; and third, the present requirement of the country, this increase comes to just 16.6%. So I have calculated the expenditure GDP ratio of the government, that is 6.6% now, and likely to go down to 15.6% in 21-22. So what is going to happen to the gross fixed capital formation of this country, because that will ultimately decide the level of investment into the economy. Now the last thing I'll come to the consumption, because so many things I'll leave on to the discussion, because if I go on taking all this my time, that would not be reasonable. Two more things. One, the government has come out with the creation of the bad bank in the name of asset reconstruction companies. What is the problem with the asset reconstruction company? You are shifting from one place, these NPAs, from one place to another place, meaning thereby you are clearing the balance sheet of the banks, but you are creating another stressed assets holder, maybe in the name of the bad bank or the asset reconstruction company. But I tell you, the government has not yet spelled out the roadmap of this asset reconstruction company or the bad bank, and it will be very difficult to transfer, because if it is in the public ownership, then again it will be a budgetary stress. Not only this, suppose I am the asset reconstruction company and the X bank has a 50,000 crores of rupees loan portfolio. I will not buy it for 50,000 crores of rupees. I will buy it for some less amount. So again, the haircut still remains with the bank. Even the bad bank or the asset reconstruction company buys a loan portfolio of say 50 lakh crores of rupees and 30 lakh crores. It means the 20 lakh crores of the haircut has to be taken by the bank itself. So it is whose money? It is the taxpayers' money. So how this is going to happen has not been clarified. And another thing is about DFI, Development Financing Institute. Sir, the government has given 20,000 crores for this Development Finance Institute, and saying that it will have a lending portfolio of 5 lakh crores over the period of 5 years. No, I don't require 5 years, sir. The main thing is, if it means you are revisiting the old system. Earlier we had the IDBI, we had the IFC. They were all development finance companies. I think Dr. Anand Rai will definitely tell on this. They were all developmental financial institutions. We used to read Basu development finance companies. They are no more. They have all been converted into bank. But now, again, we are revisiting the same kind of the creation of institution that is going to take the burden of this. Another important thing which I will have, because there is you see, endless things. The banks the question of NPA, barring the Supreme Court order of 31st August 2020, the NPA would have been much more higher, because I hope you know it very well that the Supreme Court has asked the banks not to categorize them or not to reclassify them in the NPAs till further orders, and that order hasn't yet come. When it will come, I do not know. It means the banks are going to have more and more NPA. And if you look at the financial stability report, recent report, the Reserve Bank of India itself is saying that under the baseline scenario, it is 7.5%. Under the stress line scenario, it is going to be 14.5%. So you see, it's a catch-22 situation. Unless and until the creation of NPA is not controlled, there is no point in creating the assets reconstruction company. As we used to say when you used to teach the black money, the point of origin of black money has to be controlled. No? It is not that after the black money has been generated and the operation of the black money you are trying to control, like all JHA panel and all that. The simple thing is, how do you allow? That's why I seriously doubt the minimum government and maximum governance, because if you look at the entire scenario, more and more centralism is going up, less and less federalism is there. And final point of mine is that, yes, I can congratulate Nirmala Sitharaman for one thing, because she had only two choices. Either clamping down social fiscal spending and holding back taxpayer, she avoided both. And what is the way out she has resorted to? That is saving my plot, saving my house in the name of the asset monetization pipeline. And that is why they want to finance it, because the government knew it fully well that the public-private partnership has been failed, because there was no good outcomes of the public-private partnership. And that is why they have come to the asset monetization plan. So friends, I am stopping myself here only, because I don't want to go as long, because there are other better panelists than me who will say very good things. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your enlightening aspects and a thorough analysis of this budget. You have identified some very fantastic points, I would definitely say. 6 pillars onto which this budget rested. Then weaknesses identified by you, a hit at the federal structure by the government, by the central government itself, creation of a land bank in the name of asset monetization of PSUs and so on. That's been a fantastic analysis by you, sir, and I think all the participants must have benefited by your thorough analysis, and it also poses a challenge to all of us to further analyze the details, go into the in-depth analysis of all these things instead of taking them onto the face of them. Thank you, sir, once again. I now move on to our next panelists, CA Abhishek Sharma, who has been an expert into the indirect taxes and direct taxes also, although his primary area of practice has been into GST and other indirect taxes like customs and so on. So, Abhishek Sharma ji, over to you, sir, for your ideas, your inputs, your analysis onto this budget. Abhishek Sharma ji.
Thank you, Prashant ji, moderator of this program, and my fellow colleague, chartered accountant, and a good friend of mine, Respected Somdev sir, economist, and my other co-panelists. First of all, I am thankful to IRM and Ravi ji particularly for giving me this opportunity to discuss my thoughts here on this Union Budget 2021. Because I am traveling due to some urgent work, I was supposed to travel, so maybe my network is not up to that mark which it was supposed to be while sitting in my office, but still I'm trying my best to cope up with the situation and to give my best to you people. Friends, first of all, I just want to tell you that the student budget 2021, before coming of this budget, we all were having very much expectations from the budget, because the budget was coming in a situation like which was never before, right? Because this COVID pandemic, this global pandemic, we can say, this type of pandemic have been never witnessed by us ever before. So we were expecting that government will give some initial relaxations, some immediate relaxations at this time, so that at least the mindset of the lower and upper middle class of people can be said that the government is with them, right? But once the budget is being announced, and while observing the things, what we find that government is still focusing on long-term vision, particularly for this country, which includes the long-term health planning, infrastructure development, whether it is railway, is it road, and other developments, whether it is the security of the borders of India. So, according to me, before I just give a key insights of the tax proposals of the budget, important provisions, just want to mention it that still what I particularly can observe as a financial analysis, that the government focus of the government is again just to go for the long-term vision, and government do not believe in the short-term benefits given to the any class of the particular taxpayers. So in the budget itself, government have planned various long-term visions. Lot of relaxations have been given, but not some immediate relaxations. So for me, this budget was just a majorly was just a procedural changes have been brought as far as some direct and indirect taxes are concerned, and the government have focused on the long-term development of various infrastructure and health facility of this country. Some important points. I start with this direct taxes. Just I want to highlight and mention. As far as direct taxes are concerned, so major procedural changes were there, some relaxations was there, but no relief or no, we can say, change was given in the personal income tax slab. Apart from the tax slab, which Somdevji was also quoting for the special senior citizen persons more than the age of 75 years, which I thought particularly that there was no need of that. Why there was no need? Because of two reasons. Number one, the we do not have any because in the section it is itself given that if that super senior special person having the age of 75 more than 75 years is having only pension income and interest income, then only he is supposed to not file his return. He is exempted for filing of his return of income tax, right? But as far as my knowledge and the provisions are concerned, what I understand that when government is paying pensions to senior citizens, and also when the bank is paying interest, they already get deduct the TDS part, right, out of that income. So still, what I find that major of the cases, they were supposed to not to be liable as a tax. So even if they are not filing their return, so it will not put any changes in the procedure and the impact on the taxation what already it is there in the situation, right? So for me, there was no need for this provision. But what we were expecting as government is promoting youth, right? And we are having a vision of a youth country, right? So the for me it should be like that. Any new like youth and all up to a particular age. It is my perception what I am talking about. Cannot tell what the government is thinking. If any youth is coming up with his own business and all, yes, provisions are there for the startup, exemptions are there for the startup. But if you go through the size for which the exemptions are being given to the startup, then it is a youth, and a common man, a common youth who wants to start his own cannot get fall into that category. So what I want to convey is that there must be some type of relaxation which should be given to particularly youth up to a certain category, certain age for starting his own business, right? And there should not be any monetary limit of a crore or 10 crore rupees of starting that business. That is my perception. So it was one of the changes that if any pensioner, any super senior special citizen having the age of 75 years or more and getting only pension income and interest income, they need not to file the return. That was the one key aspect. Apart from that, there was no change in the personal income tax slab. If I come to the another part, when we speak about the tax audit, tax audit is something when government have fixed up the criteria that if any business, whether it is a firm, proprietorship, partnership, company, or any other class of person, is having a turnover of more than a particular limit, then he or she or they may are supposed to undergo for a tax audit. Like in earlier budget, the limit of tax audit has been enhanced from 1 crore rupees to 5 crore rupees if 95% of total expenditure or receipt of that business as a whole are from the digital system, means it is from the banking system, and the cash expenditure and cash receipts in total do not fall more than 5%, then the limit is enhanced from 1 crore to 5 crore. In this budget, particularly, this limit is again enhanced to 10 crore rupees. So it means if your 95% of payment and receipts are coming through the banking channels, then there is no need to get that books of accounts audited if your turnover is up to rupees 10 crore. For me, particularly, again, this provision is not, I found suitable. And I tell you why I not found suitable, because I just linked it with another provision which the government have changed now in this particular year. Then only you will be able to understand why I'm finding this provision is not suitable. There is another provision of completing the assessment and the reassessment part. There is a word called assessment. Assessment means the income tax return which you are filing is to be examined, valued, and assessed by the income tax authority. That is assessment. And what is a reassessment? If suppose your assessment has been done, but later on it comes to the knowledge of the income tax department and authorities, whether by of any complaint or any other documents or surveys of any of the entities related to you, is being found by the income tax department, and then they came to know there is some income which escape assessment, then there comes the provision of reassessment. So even though after the assessment, income tax department can again open the cases for the reassessment. So earlier the time limit for this to open the cases for reassessment, means for second assessment, was 4 years in normal cases, and then
I think might
I,
be.
I think there has been some internet connectivity problem with Abhishek Sharma ji. I hope the problem gets resolved soon and he is back with us.
sorry, I think there was a network problem. So what I want to convey that earlier the limit of the 4 years or 6 years is now been reduced to 3 years. It means the government is having that 3 years time itself to assess your income. And apart from the special cases, for more than 50 lakh rupees I've shared with you, government cannot reopen your cases more than 3 years. So why the tax audit is important? It's because if any assessee get his accounts audited by any chartered accountant under section 44 AB, which is called as a tax audit, then at the time of audit itself, chartered accountants do correct the various violations of any provisions of the law is there, which have been done by the assessee. And the assessee will be able to pay the taxes at that time only for any particular type of income which have not been included or which has been disallowed, right? But when the cases come to the department after a particular period of time, then what? Then department is having 3 years only. So if any income is there which was supposed to be taxed along with the normal income of the assessee, or there is any expenses which was supposed to be disallowed, but the accounts have not been edited because of the reason of that 10 crore limit, then there may be the cases and the chances that the proper revenue, tax revenue, which the government was supposed to collect, was not be due to this and not be able to get this. So for me, particularly the expansion of that limit of tax audit from that 1 crore to 5 crore and now from up to rupees 10 crore is not justified and justifiable, right? So the government into this 1% company and the companies that 2013. Earlier, the NRIs were not allowed to open. So it shows that government wants NRIs to the long-term infrastructure development of certain provisions, which I want to highlight here as far as income tax is concerned, that which reflect that now the infrastructure development is again going to come very soon in India, and the rates of the property, commercial property lands or some flats or this again. Why? Is because after this COVID, when the whole business and when the whole country is understanding that now the GDP rate of India, the growth expected growth rate of India is going to be like anything, and it is not comparable and matchable with other countries. Say if US is expecting a GDP rate of 4 to 5%, development rate, increasing rate of 4 to 5% next year. India is expecting of more than 10%, which is double than the rate of US or any other country. So in the income tax act particularly, there are some provisions which indicates and reflect that government is very much keen to increase the infrastructure development and to give relief to this housing segment, which includes the real estate developer and builders particularly. So there is a section in section 80I is there, which gives relief to the developer and this real estate developer and builders who just construct their buildings for this poor persons. So there is a scheme which is called as a Prime Minister Poor this construction scheme. So which says if a developer is developing the particular type of flats or doing the construction for these schemes, then whatever the rental he's getting, developer is getting, is completely tax-free from the income tax. So earlier the limit for this, the time limit for this was up to March 2021, but now government have expanded that limit, increased it up to March 2022, right? So government is again very much keen to give some sort of relief to this infrastructure developer, particularly for this real estate and for these builders, right? So which indicates now the construction segment, which was stopped due to in COVID timing, is again going to have some good hike in near future, right? So apart from that, one important relief which the government have given is for the startups. Startups who were supposed to start their business to 31st March 2021. That particular time limit is again expanded by the government. And now they can work for this up to 31st March 2022. And they are having an income tax exemption of 7 years out of the total 10 years. Any 10 years, they can go for a 7-year exemption for the income tax. Earlier, that time limit was expiring in March 21, and the government expanded that time limit to the March 2022. That was again a very good change which government have come here, right? But again, very important change because in earlier budgets, government have withdrawn this dividend distribution members, its shareholders, their company are supposed to deduct dividend distribution tax and pay to the government, and the dividend was exempt in
I think there is some again net connectivity problem at the end of Abhishek Sharma ji. Sir, am I audible to you? Abhishek ji?
Yes, yes, my voice is coming to you, Prashant ji.
हाँ
My voice is coming to you, Prashant ji.
हाँ अब आ रही है सर आपकी आवाज.
Okay, maybe because I am having a poor network, so I will sum up in next 5 minutes. Then we can take up any query further. Okay.
Right, sir.
So for income tax, I'm just taking this last provision, then I will come to some important highlights of the GST. So what I want to convey that there is a provision of the advance tax. If you are not paying any taxes during the financial year itself, advance taxes, if then you have to pay interest under section 234 A, B, and C for this. So particularly section 234C, there for non-payment of advance taxes, interest was supposed to be paid at the rate of 1%. So that section was particularly very much problematic for the persons who are getting dividend from the companies, because the time limit is not fixed, and even they receive a dividend in the month of January, February, they came up with this important amendment to just give relief to them taxes in the section 234C for the dividend amount which they are receiving from the companies. It is again giving a good relief to the investor, and that could be one of the reasons that why the share market is getting boom due to this after the budget, right? And we have seen our eye also in the stock market. So what I want to convey that this budget gives do not give any immediate relief to the intender or to, I can say, the public as a large, but the government have made the planning in a way as like, if I do remember correctly, then the budget allocated to the health sector is being increased up to 137% as compared to the last union budget. And again, they have put aside more than 1,20,000 crore rupees for the railway development in the same amount for the road development. So which reflects that the government have a planning and intending to go for the long-term infrastructure development of the country, which can give some good sort of employment as well, and can develop. They can give a relief to the country as a in long term, but not immediate relief. I just related to the indirect taxes. If I speak about the GST, then there is an important concept of GST audit. If any SSC is having a turnover of more than a particular limit, say 2 crore rupees, then there is a need to undergo for the GST audit, and a chartered accountant or a cost accountant need to audit the account for the SSC and have to submit to the government whether the taxes have been paid correctly, whether input have been taken correctly and all. But this particular provision of the GST audit is being withdrawn by the government in this union budget, and I'm not happy with this withdrawn, because all of the taxes which have been deposited in the annual GST reconciliation, the GST tax audit, that is only due to this provision. And if this GST audit provision is being withdrawn by the government, then I'm afraid and scared whether government will be able to see the actual GST liability, and whether the differences in the GST tax, which was supposed to be deposited and which has actually been deposited, is going to be deposited with the government very soon without any litigation or without when the assessment has been done by the government. So for me, particularly, this provision should not be there. GST audit must be restored immediately by the for getting this differences in the GST taxes to be paid to the government annually on the part of that turnover for which GST has not been paid. Right. Apart from that, some have been done with the GST, with the excise on particular tobacco and this petroleum, and custom duties on some of the products have also been increased and also have been reduced. So what I want to convey that this budget, for me particularly, do not have any immediate relief measures for the industry, whether it is a company, because as far as business and industry are concerned, there were two types of demands to the government. Number one, just as far as exports are concerned, these SEZs were supposed to be tax exempt. There are no income tax on the SEZs. If your industry are there in the special economic zone, then no tax exemption are there. But there is a provision of AMT. AMT means alternative minimum tax. Even though these SEZs are supposed to be exempted from the tax, but due to the provision of this AMT, they need to pay 18.5% of taxes on their income annually on their book. Exporters in SEZs, they are still paying exporters, particularly to the government, to remove and withdraw this AMT, but that has not been done in this union budget. And in last, as in last budget, government just was intending to give a boost up to the manufacturing industry and to other companies as well. And the rate of income tax, which was 30%, has been reduced to 15% on the new manufacturing industry, particularly in the last budget. And to other domestic companies, it is reduced to 22%. But if you are doing the business in a partnership form, then still they need to pay taxes at the high rate of 30%. So it was a demand from the small and medium enterprises to the government that who are working with the as a partnership concern and all, that they should be having the same tax rate for our new manufacturing business or existing business as far as the companies and corporates are concerned. But in this budget particularly, we were expecting that this amendment, this has not been done in the budget. So, and again, some small taxpayers, individuals I'm talking about, were expecting some small relief in the income tax slabs. That has not been done. So I'm not saying that government are not given, this budget is not so good. What I want to convey that no immediate relief has been given to the taxpayers and the assessees, whether it is a corporate or individual. But when we go through the budget announcement, when we go through the budget facts, which the government are going to send the revenue expenditure, then we understand the government is very much keen for the long-term vision, and government is believing for the long-term in such a development of this country, which can give to the security to the nation, which can give employment to the more and more people, and which can definitely increase the average income level of the country. But it will take time and cannot get done immediately. That was all from my side. Over to you, Prashantji. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhishek ji, for having inputs from you onto the matters related to direct taxes as well as indirect taxes. Some fine points as elaborated by you with respect to relaxation for filing of IT returns for persons above the age of 75 years. And you have rightly pointed out that there is no such need of highlighting this point, because persons above the age of 75 years normally have either pension income or interest on FDs. So it is not of much, it is not going to impact them much. Then besides that, changes in matters related to assessment procedures, reassessment procedures, where the government has reduced the time limit from 4 to 6 years to 3 years, because the government feels that 3 years time is sufficient. Then changes in matters related to tax audit as well as GST audit. Of course, as far as I remember, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India has submitted its reservations onto that, and their presentation to the Finance Ministry will be taken in right spirit, especially with respect to reintroduction of GST audit. Thanks for your side for the inputs from you, Abhishek Sharma ji. I'll now move on to our third panelist, Dr. Anand Rai, who is having a fantastic experience of more than 23 years into research, into microfinance, into sustainability development. Sir, over to you, and we would like to hear from you, your analysis, your ideas about this budget. Dr. Anand Rai, sir, over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And I can say it was beautifully set up by Professor Som and CA Abhishek ji on this facts and figures about this budget. So, I would like to focus on the perspective side, because most of the facts and figures have already been discussed and told about both the esteemed panelists. And in the last 10 days, I hope that all the participants must have gone through the facts and figures about the budget, the numbers like expenditures and revenues, fiscal deficits, growth rate, and all that. So in the next 10 minutes, I would like to give my perspective on that, particularly from the economist view and macro. I would rather focus on the macro side of it. That this, if you look at the situation, the current situation, this is no doubt an unprecedented situation which we are going through, and it is for the first time that India has entered into the recession phase. Technically, we call it as recession because in the last 2 consecutive quarters we have seen the GDP contracting, and that has never been seen in the last 40-50 years or so. And therefore, this kind of unprecedented situation requires an unprecedented action plans and policies. And usually we look at normally the budget as that kind of a scenario where we expect this kind of unprecedented policies will be announced by the government. And that probably is missing in this budget. This is my personal opinion that this probably we have missed it big time. Reason being that if you look at worldwide scenarios, this is not like 2008, US financial crisis, or 2010 European crisis, or 2000, this dot-com bubble bust. Still, we survived. We have never seen the GDP contraction in those years also. But this is the situation where we had, huge job losses in crores. A lot of MSMEs were really struggling to come up, and that has actually, pained everybody across the segments, and particularly the 70% of the population, the poor or the lower middle class and the middle class. They are the backbone of the economy, and they are the biggest sufferers in the last, I would say, 9, 10, 11 months. And particularly if I look at the job of finance ministry, it is quite challenging because they have to really see the balance between the growth and the fiscal deficit, the fiscal imbalances and the growth. And of course, at this particular juncture, worldwide also, everybody is talking about growth, because that will ultimately bring back the employment rate or the job creations and the profitability and so on. So if you look at from the GDP growth rate perspective, the focus was primarily on the improving the supply side and infrastructure expenditure. And that has a long-term repercussions. You cannot expect these things to happen in, say, 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year time. Because if you are putting, say, 5.5 lakh crores in infrastructure, you cannot look at the job creation happening, next day or next month. So this type of situation requires an immediate relief measure. And there, of course, the government should have, not thought of much on the fiscal side or the fiscal imbalance side, but they should have given the relief to the middle class and lower middle class and the poor section. Because once they will start buying, then only you can expect the economy to grow. And we are expecting, say, 11, 12, 13% of growth rate. Because if, nowadays it is always talked about a V-shaped recovery. But if you look at the V-shaped recovery, there is a contraction. And then if you are looking at this second leg of the V, and if you're trying to match with that, then we have to really, do a lot of other stuff to make that GDP growing by 14, 15% in the first 2 years. Then only probably will be able to match with the expectations and the main things about the economy. Because if we next year will grow by 10%, means that in the next 2 years, in the last 2 years, we are actually growing at 0%. The last year it was 11% contraction. And the next year, if you're growing at 10, 11%, in the last 2 years, the average growth rate is 0, right? So
because of the lower base,
situation requires an unprecedented move that is absolutely missing in this budget. And probably the solution could have been that more incentives and stimulus to the middle class and the lower poorer sections. And that was missing. Like for example, in Manrega, if you look at, the Manrega targets about the poor of the society, and they have cut the expenditure on that side. Manrega has been cut. Okay, middle class, ultimately, if you look at the US stimulus, $2.2 trillion stimulus was given to US citizens, and they are the developed nations, they are the smart countries. They know that they have also fiscal imbalances, but then they know that this is the demand side problem, not a supply side problem. And if you really want to focus on the growth, then you have to look at the demand side and let people buy more, and then probably the industry will grow, because there is no constraint of supply. Company has the capacity, but they don't have demand to cater to supply. So supply side is not a challenge at this stage. Demand side is a problem. The government is primarily focusing on the supply side, giving infrastructure that will enhance the more manufacturing setup, And again, this is the supply side. So immediate reaction to this budget is that probably they have missed this side of the economic growth big time, which could have given a large, relief to the people who have lost their jobs in crores. MSMEs are the biggest backbone. Again, like there is no clear-cut roadmap for MSMEs to revive. Because if you look at the stock market per se, the stock market has gone by almost 15-16% in the last 10 days, 16% up. And out of that, 10% can be attributed to budget, right? 10% almost is equivalent to $200 billion, which is 15 lakh crores. So if you look at that phenomena, this is all happened because of all top 100 companies, top 50 companies, and they are doing better because they have an edge over the others. But at the same time, in the last 9 months, and if you look at the numbers also, the profitability of all those 100 companies has gone up by 20-30%, quarter on quarter. But at the same time, the MSMEs have actually collapsed during these years. And MSMEs are contributing almost 30% of the employees of the country, and particularly the lower middle class and the poor section. So here, of course, the focus should be more towards MSMEs revival plan of action, roadmap, and then some stimulus directly getting into the accounts of the poor or the lower middle class so that they can start buying more. And that could have revived the economy in a much better and solid manner. So that is one part. And second aspect that was missing in the budget was the education. We come from education background, from a management education system, and worldwide also, if you look at the developed nations, their expenditure on the education is quite large. But here, we are really lagging in that perspective. And we know that the better educations will create better skilled manpower, workforce, and that in turn will actually take the country to a better path. Although it is a slow to medium to long term strategy, but then there is no roadmap for the fact that we have a new education policy. But if you look at the budget allocation, probably we have cut the education budget by 6,000 crores. So that is something which is a mismatch with the intention through a new education policy and the kind of budget allocation which the government has done to the education. I think there is a big mismatch. So education should have been given much more focus. Although it is a long term, I understand that, but then this is a real backbone, and that is absolutely missing. Probably we could have done, something on the startup phase, the more incubators and the accelerators. So there is no talk on that, how to build that ecosystem for startups to grow. Because ultimately, if large number of people are coming from elite institutions, and if you're not able to provide them that ecosystem where they can build their own companies and provide more number of employment, then probably we are missing the bus. So in a nutshell, I would say that the education is a big miss. I would say that the direct 70% of the population, middle class, lower middle class, and the poor sections, we absolutely did not talk about that. And of course, that could have given a big boost to the economy and the MSME sectors. Some roadmap, how will you build that MSME sectors? Because you cannot let the MSMEs to go down like this, because we are not like US or European countries where all big multinationals, big companies only are there to serve. We have a large, diverse population with 50% of people are semi-skilled and unskilled, and we have to give them that opportunities also. And certainly these MSMEs have a lot of roles to play going forward. So these are some of the misses, I think, which this budget somewhere down the line could not talk about. And so yeah, so this is my opinion on this about this budget. Thank you.
Good, Dr. Roy. Good.
Dr. Rai has given some fantastic inputs. You have rightly pointed out, sir, that the roadmap for putting MSMEs back to track, in fact, contributing to the path of growth, that has been somewhere missing into this budget. And even the expenditure onto Manrega is missing, which has also helped to in providing employment to the rural sector, especially during COVID-19 times when the entire country was under lockdown, the economic sector was locked down, the manufacturing aspects were onto a halt, and even the government at that time insisted or in fact realized the importance of Manrega, but that expenditure onto Manrega is missing somewhere around in this budget. And you have again rightly pointed out that that concept of demand pull economy, that should have been emphasized instead of highlighting the increment in expenditure over the next 5 years or so on. That concept should have been highlighted. Fine. Now I have received certain questions from our participants, and I would request our panelists to sir, give your suggestions or give your inputs onto those questions. So first of all, let me just handle these questions one by one, please.
What could be the policies for the startups in Manrega?
Sir, there has been a question that what could have been the policies for startups as well as entrepreneurs in this budget, or what should have been the emphasis of the government, in fact the Ministry of Finance, for promoting startups and entrepreneurs, as they, although they have come up with certain certain policies, but what could have been more as far as the promoting the idea of Atmanirbhar Bharat is there? Well, what should have been done? First of all, from Dr. Somdev, sir.
Yes, please. Yes, please. So thank you. Let me thank Professor Anand Rai, because he has almost supported what I
Sir,
said.
आप म्यूट हैं मेरे ख्याल से.
No, my mic is working. I am not audible? I should be audible.
Yeah, yes, sir. Please.
So I am thankful to Dr. Rai, because whatever point of view I submitted, I got a support from him. Thank you, sir. Sir, before taking up this question, let me tell you, I have the complete major scheme-wise outlay with me. Core of the core scheme means बहुत important जो है. Then core and then major central sector schemes. Almost all expenditures have been reduced. As Dr. Rai has rightly said, Manrega, this is minus 34% if you look at the revised estimates of 2020-21. National Social Assistance Program, minus 78%. So the social sector is extremely lacking, and as I told you, the demand stimulus is not there. Now I am coming to the question of the startup and the enterprise. Sir, for the startup, the finance minister has earmarked 15,000 crores of rupees. That is nothing, I tell you. It is just like a drop in the ocean. Because if you look at the Indian ecosystem, now people are coming with huge amount of startups. And the government has not realized that the failure rate of the startups is as high as 96 to 97%. It means only 3 or 4% startups are succeeding. So the government should have come out with certain physical things rather than the financial aspect. Say, for example, complete tax holiday, number one. Number two, if some startup is failing, that a startup should be compensated to a reasonable level so that he or she can be further incentivized to explore more or to research more. And not only this, most of the startups are in the service industry. In fact, more and more startups should be promoted in the real sector, because what happens in the service sector, one service comes today and disappears tomorrow. So this is not going to create a continuous value addition to the GDP or to the system as a whole. And then the unorganized sector has to be taken care of. Because if you look at this point of time, 94% of the employment is being provided by the unorganized sector. Only 6% is being given by the organized sector. So you must concentrate on them. You should not concentrate on the corporate sector in the way, as Raya has very rightly said. During last 11, 12 months, top 50 companies have added up 35% more wealth to them. This has not added to the common man's demand or to the common man's creation of consumption expenditure. So the greatest thing is that the startup should be given more and more incentive in terms of the real sector rather than in the service sector. One more thing, say for example, this Arogya Setu app. There was a big hue and cry in the ministry. Who developed this? Nobody knows it. What is this? So there has to be a certain kind of a monitoring and hand-holding process in the economy so that whatever is going on, that should be promoted. Thank you.
Dr. Rai sir,
Yeah.
आपकी तरफ से ideas sir, please.
Just one point I would like to add. Professor Som sir has just very beautifully summed up this thing. And so like I would like to give an example of Israel. So what they do is that they provide, worth 5 crore rupees to these startups and say that even let's say if you become successful in that venture, then you can pay us back. If you fail, don't worry about it. We'll not ask that money back from you.
That is important.
Kind of a culture, once it is created, then the people will automatically start taking risk. We are a country of billions, and large number of people are enterprising in nature. But then there is a lack of this capital, access and the risk associated with it. And there is, of course, a regulatory system. So one is that easy access to capital. And here I would like to mention that, the government role should be more of a facilitator than the regulator. So currently that the kind of differentiations, if we are able to implement that, if government is more accessible to these people and facilitator, then certainly people will come forward, take the loan and then take a risk. And ultimately, it is not only the job of a government to provide straightaway direct, jobs, but of course through the startup culture and ecosystem, if they are putting money and assisting the young generations to build the companies, of course that will also help in that process. So one is like easy loan, and of course the other thing Professor Som has rightly mentioned, the ecosystems and a kind of thing, ease of doing business. So these are some of the areas where if government can start working, and of course the cost of compliances and all these are the areas where actually startups really look at that, and from a government perspective, of course, because the market is open, they are there, of course, but then the risk of failure should be avoided from the capital perspective, where the government can pitch in and play a major role. Yeah. So that is.
Now, I have received a question onto taxation, but for our expert faculty onto tax, C. Abhishek Sharma. He was earlier facing some internet connectivity problems. He right now doesn't seem to be present here. I think there must be some network issue or internet problem with him. Anyway, I'll forward the question to him. Meanwhile, I'll take up the next question. Sir, this Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana, which is expected to be launched for the development of primary, secondary, and tertiary healthcare, how effective this Yojana would be, considering the wake of this COVID pandemic? And do you think that the budgetary allocation to this Yojana, this scheme, is sufficient enough, or should we have some more? And one more thing, should the central government handle this entire Yojana onto its own, or should the resources be allocated through state government, as earlier was pointed out by Somdev sir? Rai sir, pehle aapse main aapke inputs lena chahunga sir.
So in fact, this is a very interesting thing, the Atmanirbhar Bharat, and we have to learn from other countries' experiences, and that always will give us a perspective. So what happens that, in recent budget also, they have announced this thing, and that will promote, in fact, the Atmanirbhar part. So that was really good that in some areas they have increased the custom duties. So certainly this is a kind of a measure which will protect the Indian industries and the Indian manufacturers. So that was a good step in that direction. But beyond the taxation part, it is more of building an ecosystem. Like, for example, if I look at the case of China, so they have built a huge, spatial economic zone where they are inviting the manufacturers and the suppliers and the service providers to come to that particular zone. And in that particular zone, all basic necessities and all things will be provided then and there. So it's more of ease of setting up their businesses, and whatever government can help, that will go straightway to these people. So that is what exactly we have to build that infrastructure, like in bigger spatial economic zones, where all infrastructure, power, manpower, or be it electricity or basic whatever basic amenities are required to set up and run the businesses in that particular zone. If you are able to provide that, then of course the people will also get motivated to go and set up their business units there in that particular space. We had talked about it in 10 years back with the economic zone, spatial economic zone, SEZs. But then probably the government could not implement in the manner in which it should have been implemented. And then probably some big land, large land, chunk of lands were given to some business people, and then it was all it was all in vain, in fact, and the focus was shifted to something else. So I think still we should focus on these kind of spatial zones and spatial economic zones, because each city, each district has its own characteristics. Like Moradabad has its own, skill set people. They are world class, suppliers of the brass items. Similarly, Saharanpur. Some cities, Banaras, Bhadoi has carpet industries. And if you look at the basic infrastructure facilities on those cities, absolutely lacking. So what we can do, if we are able to provide textile parks, this time has around, government has announced setting up textiles park, which provides a large number of employment. So that in fact is a good step. And similarly, in different sectors also, if we are able to provide those basic infrastructure, I think we can change the entire scenario altogether. So of course, this Atmanirbhar is the way to go forward. But implementation is where actually we have to really focus on, and facilitator rather than regulator. So these are some key things that will really help build those sectors in a much better manner.
We have received some more questions also, but first, this question is, the presenter has asked Dr. Somdev sir to handle this question. He has put up this question onto the chat box also, sir, that whether starting of an MSME, a textile MSME, will be a good idea in this time when the government has announced its intention to set up 7 textile parks in India. He's a student of ours, and I think he wants to become an entrepreneur. So that's why he has put up this question, whether setting up or starting a textile MSME in this present scenario would be a good idea when the government has announced its intention to come up with textile parks. Somdev sir.
Yes, please. Sir, it is always a good idea to become the entrepreneur. The problem is in the MSME, whether it is being set up at the textile park or elsewhere, that doesn't matter. The only thing is whether the setting up environment is there or not. If you can get proper finances, if you can get proper ecosystem, there is no harm in setting up the MSME. But the problem is, even in case of MSME, there is a provision that you are exempted from the collateral security. But still, the banks are hesitant to finance to the new entrepreneurs. That is one very important area, because banks are already suffering from the problem of the NPAs. And I hope you understand, even in the MSME sector, there is a large amount of NPAs are there. So day by day, the NPA problem is increasing in the MSME sector also. The simple question is, as Dr. Rai has said very rightly, in Israel, you have a different system. Here also, you too can have a system. There must be some hand holding. That hand holding is not there, either in terms of a facilitator or in terms of a monitor or in terms of the aiding your marketing or raw material or whatever. That is not there. That is why it is very difficult. I cannot say, because it all depends on the entrepreneurship skill of the person who is going to set up the MSME. But yes, all the time you can set up any unit, you can become entrepreneur. The only thing is that how you have the courage to fight the existing complexities or the rigmarole of the system which you are facing. See, saying all this on the budget in the House of Parliament is very easy. But when you go at the ground level, you don't get the electricity connection for many months. You don't get the regularization of plot for many months. You don't get the inspection report from the district industry center. These are the things which have to be taken care of. And then I can tell you, it is not the center who will take this into account. It is the states that will take it. Let the states come out. That is why I told you in the beginning, the government of India should have given more and more liberty to the states, and there should have been a kind of a system of a score sheet that the state who are doing on these counts better, they will be given more assistance. That should have been there, as they have done in case of this asset monetization. CPSEs are going to be awarded marks, that what things they have planned, how they have planned, what is their performance. But at the end of it, the land is not being left in the hands of the CPSE. That is being taken over by the center, and how they will sell, how they will make the concessions, nobody knows. That is the problem.
Although a number of questions, but there is paucity of time, and I know our speakers, they also are facing this limitation.
Sir,
Sir,
Prashant, I have one thing to say,
sir,
because I have my class at 1 o'clock. So I'll have to leave latest by 12:45. That's why I didn't come there at the IRM. Otherwise, I would be happy to come there.
definitely, sir. Sir,
If you can free me 10-15 minutes, I'll be happy.
fine, sir. No, but we have decided to restrict this one question only, sir. And this person,
no.
Mr. Rakesh, इन्होंने ये question यहीं पर ही chat box में put up किया है. How will this budget be proved to be goal-oriented for state employees? Sir, पहले आपकी तरफ से, sir.
It has nothing to do with the state employees, I tell you. It has nothing to do with the state employees, because the simple thing is that this is the central government budget. Yes, one thing has been done by the central government, that the amount of LTC, they have done certain changes so far as the taxation aspect is concerned, but that I don't think is of much use, because because they have written one sentence, subject to the conditions. And those conditions are not yet out by the central government. So you don't know what really is going to happen. The only thing the government should do is to create more and more employment in the unorganized sector rather than in the organized sector. Only that will promote the consumption spirit, then the demand spirit, and then finally the investment and employment spirit also. As we call in economics the animal spirit. The animal spirit has to be taken up. Only then the investment will go up.
Right, sir. The time for one more question, and I will request Dr. Anand Rai, sir, to handle it. So, what is the impact on the insurance sector with the liberalization or with the permitting of FDI from 49% to 74%?
Oh, yes, so I was expecting this question, in fact, because that's the thing which, government has really done a great job in that particular sector. And insurance sector was a sector which was really demanding this, the FDI increase. And because of the political issues, this could not have had been done in the past. And this time around, the government has, shown the courage to allow this, that FDI from 49 to 74, because the moment you say 74 means you are actually shifting the ownership altogether and the control, with of course some caveat that of course the independent directors and the Indian managements will be much more in numbers. So that was the caveat. That was a good step. And in fact, that will enhance the insurance sector in a big way, because that will bring in a lot of foreign capital, and these foreign players are waiting for that to happen. And of course, that will boost the life insurance and particularly the general insurance sector and health insurance sector, because penetration of the Indian insurance sector is still quite low as compared to even the emerging economies, including China or Malaysia. Forget about US and Europe. So potential is immense in that particular sector. It is one of the largest job providers also. A large number of people are employed in insurance sector. So that's always a good and welcome move by the government, and huge scope going forward in that particular sector, and better than the banking sectors, I believe, because banking sector is actually is on the path of disruption. There are a lot of kind of PayPal or Paytm or this kind of payment gateways. They are actually giving a lot of threat to the established banks, but this kind of disruption is not going to happen in the insurance sector. So I mean, this is of course in a very stagnant path of growth in the next 10 years or so, and that will expand, of course. It is always a welcome move, and great things what government has done this time around.
We have another question from our faculty, Dr. Tarjini Goyal. Over to you, madam.
Sir, first I would like to seriously thank you, since it has been an enlightening session. I would like to thank especially to Somdev sir and Anand sir. But sir, just like to have your views on one thing. Actually, one way we are saying that we have been into digitalization of everything, being digital India now that we call ourselves. Why the cases have been closed after 3 years? So the files and all that stuff. So I would like to know your views on this, sir. So is it a good thing that the government should follow being digital India? The files have been digitally available with them. So is it the right thing?
Sir, I think.
The sound.
Arjuni, I can tell you one thing. Howsoever digitized we are, this is my practical experience. Howsoever digitized we are, we never lose the importance of the paper. Even in case wherever the digitization is complete, still they are asking for the papers. So in any case, the importance of paper will never end. Even we are dead, even after death, the papers will be important. This is one kind of observation. Now, the digitization per se, if you look at the data of the National Crime Record Bureau statistics, digitization growth is X%, but the crime, you can say the cyber crime rate is 5 times of the digitization. That is the place where we need to do something. Tomorrow, what happens, Tarjini? Somebody will clone Tarjini is your face and will get so many accounts opened. And then you will say, sir, I haven't done this. Then they will say, no. You show the papers. You show this evidence. You show this proof. Then you will have to present yourself with the paper only. I can tell you, this is very good if it is done properly. If you have read Pawan Duggal, who happens to be one of the experts on the cyber issues, everybody has written very clearly. Do you remember once Dr. Ravi Shankar Prasad, the law minister of our country, he challenged on the television, let me see who can enroll my Aadhaar card and all that. The next day, a German hacker told him, this is your number, this is your this is your account number, this is what it is. So you see, there has to be certain, you can say, firewalls. Unless you create the firewalls, you conduct a survey in the institute, either through your students or by yourself. How many people were cheated on this cyber portal, and how many grievances have been redressed? Hardly 1 to 2%. That is the real problem. That's why the digitization is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You explained this aspect very phenomenally. We are coming to the end of this session, sir, and I will request Dr. Gaurav Malpani to present a vote of thanks for this session to our distinguished speakers. Over to Dr. Gaurav Malpani.
Great, great. Gaurav,
Good afternoon, all.
Gaurav, I
I
have one
deem
thing
it
to say.
a great honor and privilege to propose a vote of thanks on this memorable occasion. Sir, you want to speak something?
No, I just want to tell you one thing. Let us have someday a full day. I'll come to your institute. We'll open discussion on the budget. There are so many other things still left out.
Yeah.
So we can do it some other time.
Absolutely, sir.
No problem. Please,
Sir, it will be our pleasure, sir.
please go ahead.
Okay. Sir. Let me first of all start by giving glory to the Almighty God for making today's occasion a resounding success. First and foremost, I thank our President Madam for giving us this opportunity to conduct this program. We are grateful to our panelists, Dr. Somdev, CA Abhishek Sharma, and Dr. Anand Rai, who despite of their busy schedule, has found time to grace this program. My heartfelt thanks to our Director, Dr. Jesse John, Deputy Director, Dr. Tarjini Goyal, CA Prashant Sripani, the moderator for the session, and Dr. Rustam Bora for their stewardship, their support, vision, and commitment. I would also like to thank our IT and social media team for creating a buzz for this program. Finally, I leave you by saying this inspiring quote by Martin Luther King. An individual has not started living until he rises above the confines of his individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity. Once again, I thank you all for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All the participants are requested to please fill up the feedback form which has been given to you via the chat box, because only after receiving the feedback from you people, you will be eligible to get the e-certificates for today's program.
Thank you very much. Now I'm leaving. Thank you, Rai.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Som, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Tarjini.
sir.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.